Good morning. It is, I can't remember the day. I think it's Thursday. It's Wednesday or Thursday. I'm not sure. In any case, it is October 19th. It's 5:30 in the morning. I'm back with you for another session on scanning, spelled Sqanning. Just spelled with a Q to sort of distinguish it from the traditional spelling of scanning, which if you do a search for it, you'll find a million different versions of that. But scanning, as I defined it, is a relaxation technique which utilizes the incremental release of muscular tension to achieve a deep state of physical, emotional, and mental calm. Scanning. So we're going to be scanning for the next half hour. These sessions are half an hour, and they're simply to reinforce and remind you, if you are interested, in the fundamentals of this technique. Now, these ideas are based on the writings of a man named Thaddeus Golas, Golas, who wrote a book called The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment, in which he describes the two basic fundamental processes of the universe as these two things: contraction, squeeze your hands together tight, see what that feels like, and expansion, let go, 3, 2, 1, release. Contraction, expansion. Deep breath, expansion. So based on that theory, which I believe to be true, I developed this technique which allows you to expand. We spend the majority of our life, the majority of our day, in states of contraction, thinking, talking, building, writing, engaging in different processes, pursuing our goals. These are contractions. These are intentional efforts to bring together materials, thoughts, ideas, substances, atoms, cells, to create a process which will advance our agenda toward our goals. This is what we do most of our day. These days, there's a lot of contraction going on, and without getting specific, there's a lot of people talking, there's a lot of people theorizing, there's a lot of people writing, there's a lot of people advising, giving advice about what's to be done about this world. These are contractions. These are attempts to make sense of the chaos around us, to bring it into a form which we can more easily understand, to give us clarity. So contraction is a fundamental part of life. The problem, if it is a problem, is that we spend way too much time contracting, if there's a spectrum, contraction, and not near enough time doing the opposite, which is expansion. Now, if you believe in this theory as I do, then you understand that expansion is of equal value to contraction. What we want is an equal amount of both in our lives: contraction, expansion. When you have an equal amount, you are centered or balanced. So, for myself, when I found that when I was at my most unhappy, uncomfortable, in pain, upset, disoriented, I was overly contracted, and what I needed to do to achieve balance again was to expand. So this technique is a method by which you can expand. And I want you to begin thinking about expansion as having equal value to contraction. There's a tendency to think in life that unless I'm doing, writing, saying, building, creating, bringing things together, that I'm not doing anything of value. And these things are of value. This is the stuff of life. But what I want you to start thinking about, if you wish to practice this technique, to follow this technique, is that expansion is of equal value in that it brings us into balance. Expansion being letting go, going to nothingness, emptiness, dropping all opinions or ideas or definitions or agendas, releasing muscular tension. These are all expansive steps so that you can begin to infuse your day with as much expansion as you do contraction. It's very difficult. We have phones, we have televisions, we communicate constantly, we're on the internet constantly. These are all contracted processes, absorbing and digesting ideas, forming our own ideas, orienting ourselves in a way that we think will give us strength or understanding. These are all contracted processes. And so what's important is to try to infuse in your life the idea that of equal importance is putting down the phone, not thinking, not judging, not defining, going to a place of nothingness. This will bring us into balance so that we can more successfully engage in our life because we are more aware, we are more accepting, we are more open. Expansion can make you literally smarter, not because you've acquired more information, but because you've let go of all your preconceived notions for the moment and are therefore available to absorb and understand others. If this is contraction, make a fist, and this is contraction, and these are two people, when they try to come together, they can't. They're solid. If they expand and open themselves up and become available, permeable, then they can come together. So expansion has great value. So that's all I'll say on this for today. I think about this process a lot because I've been doing it for many years, and the more I do it, the more sense it makes, and I wish to convey this to you. So we're going to start this process with what I call the preliminary phase of scanning, that is deep breaths, stillness, and silence. Now, I just worked out. I like to scan after I worked out because working out is a contractive process, the contraction of the muscles, the bringing together of the muscles to create strength, to make myself, in effect, more solid. That's very useful. But again, if you become overly contracted, you get out of balance. So to balance that, I like to have an expansive scanning session to bring me back to a place of openness and neutrality. So if I'm a little out of breath, that's why. Start by taking deep breaths followed by stillness and silence. Deep breaths are expansive by nature. Stillness is the opposite of action. Silence is the opposite of words, thought, speech. So we're moving ourselves already into an expanded state. 3 deep breaths followed by 15 seconds of absolute stillness and silence. Absolute stillness, but continue to breathe. Here we go. 3 deep breaths. 15 seconds, absolute stillness. Don't move a muscle, but continue to breathe. Deep breath. Now, I've been scanning for years. Even so, I can only manage to do it 1, maybe 2 hours a day. The rest of my day, my waking hours, are filled with contractive processes. Working, attempting to get work, being on the internet, writing, thinking, talking, engaging, building. Contractive processes. And yet I can only manage out of that whole day 1, at the most 2 hours a day of scanning. That shows you how out of balance we can become, to where we think that our every waking hour must be filled with contraction. So this may be for many of you, I know it is for me, the first time, although the day is early, but the first time in, let's say, 12 hours that I've stopped and sat still and took a deep breath. So I always say the hardest part about scanning is starting, because it means letting go of all your contractive processes. Even if you do it once a day, you've achieved something. Now, we're going to expand even further. We're going to take 5 deep breaths followed by 30 seconds of absolute stillness and silence. 5 deep breaths. Here we go. Deepest. 30 seconds, absolute stillness and silence. Don't move a muscle. Continue to breathe. Deep breath. I say absolute stillness and silence because it's unlike anything you do the whole day. When you become absolutely still, consciously still, you become aware of how much motion you are constantly in. So you're indicating to yourself that we're doing something different. We're moving from a contractive state into an expanded state. And I always like to point out that you can't contract and expand at the same time. You can't make a fist, that's contraction, and release that fist at the same time. So anytime you expand, you've stopped contracting. So even the smallest amount of expansion is useful in your pursuit of expansion. I would say incremental muscular release because even the smallest increment, the smallest amount of expansion takes you away from contraction. And you want to start thinking about this through your day. You want to find moments when instead of looking to your phone, you put your phone down and take a deep breath. Instead of going on the internet on your computer, you sit for 60 seconds in absolute stillness and silence and start to become aware of when you are contracting and when you are expanding. And then maybe pay attention to how much of your day is spent contracting and how much of your day is spent expanding. And see if when you begin to infuse your day with expansion, if you don't become more balanced. You always want to be able to go back to contraction. That's how you get things done. That's what defines who you are. This is how you make sense of the world. Making sense is taking disparate ideas and bringing them together in a form that makes sense. But you want to have a balance. So just through scanning, you begin to build that consciousness of the difference between those two processes and how to balance yourself. The last phase of this preliminary steps is 7 deep breaths followed by a full minute, 60 seconds of absolute stillness and silence. 7 deep breaths. If you feel dizzy, take a moment. We tend to walk around in our day holding our breath, literally not getting enough oxygen. So it can be a bit of a shock to the system when you first start infusing so much oxygen into your system, but you'll see the more you do it, the easier it gets. You're moving into a completely different state of consciousness. So if there's a few moments of disorientation, that's natural. 7 deep breaths, 60 seconds, absolute stillness and silence. Here we go. Last one, deepest yet. 60 seconds, absolute stillness, silence. Continue to breathe. Deep breath. And just take a note for yourself, because this ultimately, what scanning will be, is a study. Scanning is a study of your own self, your own being. You're educating yourself, in effect, as to how you work. So we don't often take the time to really study ourselves and think about how our body works, how our consciousness works, but take a moment to see how different it feels to be slightly expanded as opposed to how you felt, let's say, a couple of minutes ago when you first started the session. You may begin to notice some changes that are indications that you have indeed expanded. You might begin to feel more still, more quiet. Your mind may have stopped racing. The thoughts you were holding so tightly to, like a fist, as you relax your mind, which follows relaxation of the body, those thoughts may have drifted away. So you might find yourself having more clarity. And that's what we need in this world, is clarity, because there's so much going on that we know we need to contend with that is perhaps making us afraid. When your mind is clouded with opinions, decisions, determinations, perspectives, you can only see so much of the world because you've narrowed the channel. When you open up, when you expand, you've opened up your vision. You can see with greater clarity. When you are ultimately expanded, you might say you can see everything, and you can make more informed decisions, not out of fear, but out of intellect. You can decide what's what. So you may begin to feel some more clarity. And we're now going to begin what I call the nuts and bolts of the technique, the actual incremental muscular release. But before, I want to make a quick touch on an idea that has to do with contraction and expansion, this continuum, and that is depression. We have a lot of things we deal with in life: agitation, concern, anxiety. The flip side of that is depression, closed off, lackluster, unwilling to engage, withdrawn. That is also a form of contraction. When you think about it, you've pulled in. In order to protect ourselves from life and the things that perhaps create fear for us, we can have two choices. We can be agitated and think and attack, which is a form of contraction, or we can close off and withdraw, which is a form of contraction. So in either case, when you're feeling bad, basically, and it's as simple as that, expansion will bring you out of those states. If you are contracted and depressed, then breathing will open you up. So just a point to touch on. Basically, it's really simple with scanning. If you feel bad, expand. You'll probably feel better. And bad can take many forms. Take a deep breath, sit in stillness and silence, and begin what I call the nuts and bolts of this technique, which is the incremental release of muscular tension. So let's begin. Make a fist, release that fist. You can't do both at the same time. The thing I discovered in this technique is that when you focus on releasing muscular tension, you have in effect induced your body with a sense of expansion. And that has again begun to move you towards a more expanded state. Even the smallest amount of expansion moves you away from contraction. So what I discovered was through releasing muscular tension, however small that release might be, I could induce a state of expansion, gradually, slowly, but ultimately satisfactorily. So you can't contract and expand at the same time. Squeeze your hands together. 3, 2, 1, release. Take a deep breath. You've just expanded. It's that simple. The most fundamental form of expansion is a deep breath, stillness and silence. But the nuts and bolts, as I say, is the incremental release of muscular tension. So we're going to move through our body releasing muscular tension. We're going to move through what I call the 8 muscular zones. You can divide your body up however you like. I found this to be useful to me. As opposed to trying to relax the whole body, we focus on particular areas, and we see where that takes us. So we start with zone 1, which is the face. On my count, I want you to release all the muscular tension you can in your face. 3, 2, 1, and release. And you'll notice if you look in the mirror, there's a drooping effect. The muscles are held up through energy. They're contracted. They're holding an expression. 3, 2, 1, and turned off the power. And there was a slackening. So that's scanning. That's scanning. If you can experience that slight release, 3, 2, 1, and you've scanned. You've expanded. I just expanded. Maybe this much, but it was an expansion. So now we're going to move through the body, and we're going to continue this process. The top of the head. On my count, I want you to release whatever muscular tension you can from the top of your head. 3, 2, 1, and release. Now, if this is an unfamiliar feeling to you, you go, well, I don't even know what the top of the head feels like. You'll get better and better at it. But focus on the zone, and then just think, can I let go of tension in that area? The top of the head, 3, 2, 1, and release. And you have the capacity to do it. You can squeeze your hands together, and on my count, release. 3, 2, 1, release. So you understand physiologically how to release tension, but you're deciding to do it. And the challenge is we get so locked into a contracted state, we tend to walk around in a contracted state, even when we're just sitting and watching TV or doing nothing. Even when we're sleeping, we tend to be holding. It's an instinctive form of self-protection that we forget we also know how to let go. You're studying the process, this technique of letting go of muscular tension. And you're taking the time to do that. You have to set aside the time to scan. You have to put everything down, all your contracted processes down. You have to find 5 minutes, 15 minutes, a half an hour to practice letting go. Top of the head, 3, 2, 1, and release. And you'll find that as you practice, you'll get better and better at it. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The hardest part of scanning is starting. Because when you start scanning, you've made the conscious decision to stop contracting, to let go of all your ideas and thoughts, all your processes, all your hobbies, all your thinking, all your ideas, your political party, your name, your career, your money. You've stopped thinking about that. You've just let go of it all to move into a more expanded state. And we don't tend to want to let go. We tend to want to hang on. Nothing wrong with that. We're alive. We want to be alive. We want to continue to do the things we do. But if you want balance in your life, you need to also do the opposite. Expand, let go. Zone 3 is the back of the head. 3, 2, 1, and release. Pay close attention to how that felt. That slight shift, no matter how small it is, from this to this, is expansion, and it counts. Incremental release of muscular tension. What happens is, as you apply yourself over time, as you get into a deeper and deeper state of expansion or relaxation, it'll start to build momentum, and pretty soon your whole body will just let go. It's the initial phase of scanning that's always the hardest, because that's when you're slowly coaxing your body to let go. And that is when it is at its most resistant. But take resistance as a sign that you are succeeding. Because if you weren't feeling resistance, you would have no contraction. So the fact that you're experiencing resistance, which is a contraction of sorts, indicates that you have a lot of contraction to let go of. And you've begun healing yourself. Zone 4 is the neck. 3, 2, 1, and release. Again, the neck. 3, 2, 1, and release. Let's do all of them. The face. 3, 2, 1, and release. The top of the head. 3, 2, 1, and release. The back of the head. 3, 2, 1, and release the neck. 3, 2, 1, and release. Moving into the shoulders. Let them drop. 3, 2, 1, and release. You don't have to count. You don't have to snap. What you're doing on the count is focusing on the area. What you're doing on the snap is releasing the muscular tension. So if this helps you, do it. If it doesn't, just do it on your own. Again, you're just looking for that change, that shift. That shift towards expansion is scanning. That feeling is what you want to practice and practice and practice until you get better and better and better at it. Just like anything, like playing the piano. The more you do it, the better you'll get at it. Zone 5, again, the shoulders, let them drop. 3, 2, 1, and release. I'm moving through these steps fairly quickly because I like to touch on each of the zones in these half-hour sessions. When you're doing it on your own, you could spend half an hour on one zone. Customize it to your body. I have no idea how your body feels. I'm not you. I know how I feel. I think we have a certain commonality as humans, but the way I experience scanning will be different from you, but just explore it. I think the basic relaxation of muscular tension is the same for all of us, but see how it feels for you and explore what works best for you. Zone 6 is the chest, stomach, front of the waist, what I call the plate of armor. 3, 2, 1, and release. And again, chest, stomach, front of the waist. 3, 2, 1, and release. Take a deep breath. In scanning, you can never take enough deep breaths, and you can never sit enough in stillness and silence. These are the fundamental states of expansion. Whenever you feel like taking a break just to sit and be still, take it. Whenever you feel like taking a breath, take it. Everything about scanning is opposite of contraction. When we are contracted, we hold our breath. When we are expanded, we breathe. When we are contracted, we are using our muscles to hold on to things, to manipulate things, to think. So when you're expanding, you are still. When you're contracted, you're forming words, thoughts, ideas. You're posting on Facebook. You're writing. You're explaining. You're lecturing. You're advising. When you're expanding, you're silent. So again, you can begin to study your day throughout the day and just take an assessment. Where am I right now? Am I more contracted or expanded? There's times, majority of the day, when you're going to be in a contracted state. This is when you're getting things done, so to speak. When you're expanded, you're not doing anything. You've let go. You're not judging. You're not defining. You're not explaining. You're not worrying. You're in a state of nothingness. Which can literally be frightening for some because you feel like you're not doing what you need to do to protect yourself, to make money, to form relationships, to succeed in your job. So letting go and doing nothing can feel frightening because it feels like if you let go, you will lose everything. But you won't. Taking 5 minutes to expand will not affect anything in your life, but it will give you that balance to go back to your life and more intelligently and with more clarity assess what needs to be done. Zone 7 is down the back, past the waist and into the pelvis. 3, 2, 1, and release. And again, the pelvis. 3, 2, 1, and release. And if I were to describe some of this musculature, I would say that contraction in these cases is felt like a clenching. You're unclenching. Unclenching your fist, unclenching your muscles, unclenching your pelvis. Letting go. Expanding. Down the back, past the waist, into the pelvis. 3, 2, 1, and release. If you feel tingling, if you feel a warming sensation, that's because expansion literally expands your blood vessels. I mean, your capillaries and arteries allows the blood to flow more freely, which will create a tingling and warm sensation. It's a sign that you are expanding. High blood pressure is a sign of over-contraction. If you have high blood pressure, expansion will lower your blood pressure because it allows the vessels to expand. The blood can flow more freely, which creates lower pressure. People say, well, why not just meditate? What is this? Is this a form of meditation? Not as traditionally defined. As I've experienced it, meditation is, well, there's stillness and there's silence, but there's an effort to clear your mind, which is the ultimate goal. What distinguishes scanning is that we're using the release of muscular tension to achieve that clarity. As your body becomes more expanded, as the muscles let go, that infuses your entire being with a state of expansion, including your mind, which as a muscle of sorts, because it holds on to, it grabs ideas and worries and concerns, the mind begins to also let go, and those ideas float away, and you are left in this state of nothingness. So that's the real distinction in scanning, is that it's a physical technique. When you start scanning, you immediately focus on releasing muscular tension. That's all you do. You don't think anything. You don't have a mantra. You don't consciously say, I'm going to clear my mind. You don't talk to yourself at all. You don't say anything, because thinking is a contraction. We're going strictly to the physical. Release of muscular tension. Zone 7, again, the pelvis, 3, 2, 1, and release. And the final zone, zone 8, down the legs, across the knees, and into the feet, 3, 2, 1, and release. Now, you really have to focus sometimes on these areas. You may not be used to thinking about how tense are my feet. You may feel tense, but you've never perhaps attempted to relax these muscles yourself. You've gone to a masseuse. You've gone to a chiropractor, shiatsu. You used external processes, external forces, people, to achieve this state of expansion. Perhaps you've had a drink or smoked a joint. These are what I call chemical expansions. You instinctively know you need to and want to expand, but you don't know how to do it. So there's a thing over there that will help you expand. So scanning is a way to self-actualize, to know and learn that you have the power to expand yourself. You have the technique within you. All you need to do is practice. It's very empowering, because you stop having that feeling of, I need this, and that to relax. I got to have a drink. I got to have a joint. I got to get to the masseuse. You have a sense of empowerment in that you know that you can achieve that state yourself. You're not dependent on anything. And that's very empowering, to know that you have the built-in tool to expand. So if you practice, you'll get better and better at it, and you can practice it anytime, anywhere. Again, the feet, 3, 2, 1, and release. Take a deep breath. Again, I've touched on each of these zones very, very quickly for purposes of this session. I advise you to take much, much more time. But the mere taking of the time, the mere decision to scan, even for 5 minutes, is expansive. The mere decision and awareness that you are going to stop contracting, even for a moment, is expansive and will bring you closer to center. And again, I have to note that when you are in a more expanded state, which I am now, just simply through going through these steps, I find myself much more aware of the value of doing nothing, of sitting in stillness and silence. My compulsion to think, to define, to advise, to speak has diminished. And I'm much more conscious of what it is just to be a human being, a body. I'm not thinking about what it means. I'm not thinking about the future. I'm not thinking about the past. I'm simply experiencing the moment. And it's quite amazing to experience the blood flowing through your body, to feel your heart beating, to be aware of the pleasure of merely taking a breath. How that affects your entire being. It's very powerful. And for those of us who are looking for some sort of satisfaction and pleasure in our life, it's a simple pleasure. And it's available to you at all times, anytime. So take advantage of that. Let's see, that's been about half an hour. That's as long as I like these sessions to go. It's called Sqanning, Sqanning. The Q, again, is just to distinguish it from other forms of scanning. Scanning is the relaxation technique, which utilizes the incremental release of muscular tension from this to achieve a deep state of physical, emotional, and mental calm. Something we could all use a little bit of every day. So I'm going to post this on my Facebook page. I'll keep it up for a while, and then I transfer it over to the Sqanning Facebook page where this and other sessions are. Every session is basically the same. If you do a search on Facebook for Sqanning, you'll see the page. But every session is exactly the same, basically. The technique is designed for simplicity. It's not going to change. I also have a YouTube page, Sqanning, where the sessions are also held. So sometimes if it's useful, I find people tell me that sometimes it's useful just to have the session playing in the background while you're working. Just listen to it. You don't have to watch. But when in doubt, just take a deep breath and sit for a few moments in stillness and silence. That's it for today. Thanks for visiting. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.